Okay, welcome back to Bounce Around Charleston. Recently, my next guest traveled to Washington, D.C. to compete in an international history contest, National History Day, and they also was honored by Senator Marlon Kimpson for their documentary. My guest today is Kevon Singleton. He's a senior at First Baptist School of Charleston, and Malik Hubbard, also a senior at First Baptist of Charleston. Thank you for being here on Bounce Around Charleston. Okay, you traveled to Washington, D.C. for the Atlanta documentary. Tell me about the experience.
It was a lot of fun. So we work our way up to nationals. We start at regionals, and then we compete there, and we won there, and we go to states, which is held in Columbia, and we compete against all the documentaries in the state. And we won there as well with our Atlanta documentary. And that allowed us the opportunity to be able to go to DC, where we compete against all the documentaries in the competition that have won also their state and local competitions. So when we traveled up to DC, we drove up and we got a house in DC. And we always take a chance to go and look at all the monuments there, and really appreciate the city. And then we also compete as well and try our best every year.
Okay, now, what was your documentary all about?
First, our documentary was titled Atlanta, The City Too Busy to Hate, the Socioeconomic Compromise That Stunned the South. Our documentary was about, in 1964, Dr. King won the Nobel Peace Prize. The city of Atlanta refused to honor him because he was colored, he was African American. And so the mayor at the time, Ivan Allen Jr., and Coca-Cola decided it would be in the best interest of the city of Atlanta and Coca-Cola if they honored him. So Atlanta decided to honor him after much discussion and controversy. They decided to honor him, and they held a dinner. At the time, the CEO of Coca-Cola, J. Paul Austin, said, Atlanta, the Coca-Cola company does not need Atlanta. You all have to decide whether Atlanta needs the Coca-Cola company. So they threatened to leave Atlanta because they didn't need him. They didn't want to be, at the time, I would say, embarrassed by the city of Atlanta because they didn't honor Dr. King because of his color. And they felt it would make the Coca-Cola company look bad. And our whole documentary is basically about that, and also the economic side of the civil rights movement, which we tend not to look at.
Okay, and so what about the Friendship 9?
The Friendship 9 was our documentary last year. We also went to the national competition in Washington, D.C. at the University of Maryland for this documentary. This was, I would say, my favorite documentary because we were able to interview the members of the Friendship 9, Willie McLeod, David Williamson, just to name a few. And they were very, very helpful in our research. And it kind of got us on the topic and on the whole scale of the economical side of the civil rights movement, because the Friendship 9, they took a stance with jail no bail, and so they went to jail and refused to pay the bail to get out, because they basically were paying for their own incarceration. They're paying to be mistreated because they're paying into the government. And they started the revolutionary jail no bail, which started the letter from Birmingham jail by Dr. King. It started the whole Montgomery bus boycotts. After they took the jail no bail strategy, everybody realized it was the economical side of the civil rights movement.
Wow. Okay. If one read your documentaries, what would you want them to walk away with?
I would appreciate if they walked away with understanding that minorities, specifically African Americans, have a lot of strength with their dollar. That we always see these court cases and we always see these marches, but we fail to realize that a large part of the civil rights movement was African Americans standing up and saying, we're not buying this good, or we have to understand that these companies have a bottom line, and they have to maintain that bottom line if they want to stay successful. So African Americans have a large part to do with, are these companies going to stay successful? And that's a large part of what we looked at in Atlanta was Coca-Cola. They have to stay successful internationally as well as nationally. So they have to keep that African American populace supporting them.
So our dollars do count.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what did it feel like when Marlon Kimpson called you and honored you?
It was an amazing experience. It really was. He contacted us and he was telling us, hey, you know, we want to honor you. And it's, to us, I think it was something that we greatly appreciated, just because, you know, these couple years, 3 years now that we've been doing documentaries together, we always tend to focus on African American history, on Black history, because we live in the city, we live in Charleston, South Carolina, and it's rich in African American history, and not just Charleston, but South Carolina and the United States as a whole is rich off of African American history. And it was just amazing to be able to get presented by another African American male, a successful African American male, that is showing us that, hey, you got, with your research, what you guys are doing matters to us, because the stories that we're trying to tell are stories that haven't been told before. Whether it's our first documentary, Marian Anderson, whether it's that one, whether it's the Friendship 9, whether it's Atlanta, these are stories that aren't told, and a lot of African Americans, a lot of Black people don't know.
Okay, and now, the big part. Both documentaries were shown at the National Museum for African American History and Culture and in the Oprah Winfrey Theater. Now, tell me how grand is that?
Now, that was awesome. When we first learned that we were going, we were so excited, because not only was our documentary shown in the theater, we were able to tour the whole day, and it was a great experience. We learned so much. But being able to sit in there and think about, as a senior and last year's juniors, we are creating documentaries that are going into the National Smithsonian for African American History and Culture. To think about that we're doing that at so young was such an honor. We really appreciate everyone there that vouches for us and says, yes, we should show this documentary. Because it's really important for people that are going there just to the museum, or to be able to see young people also feeding into the culture, feeding into the history. Wow.
Well, I'm going to that museum real soon, hopefully in July, and I'm going to look it up. So now tell the people where they can view your documentary. Our
documentaries are available on, the 2 previous documentaries are available on my Facebook page at Kevon Singleton, and the other documentary, the most recent one, is available on YouTube. If you search Atlanta, the City Too Busy to Hate, it should pop right up on YouTube and on my Facebook page for all 3 documentaries.
Young man, we're very proud of you all.
Thank you.
For the work that you all have been doing. And listening to you, I can tell you've been doing a lot of research.
Yes, sir.
And that's powerful. Okay, well, they're shown at the National Museum for African American History and Culture and in the Oprah Winfrey Theater. The 2 documentaries written by these 2 young men, Kevon Singleton and Malik Hubbard. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, coming up next, Anastasia Ketchen has something great to talk about right after this break.